Chile here with Sarah Stellar's moon. So our moon name, ascendant 0° Leo, and the moon opposing Venus, applying to conjoin Lilith. Now, midheaven ruled by Mars. Mars, five seconds from 5 astrological seconds from leaving the 18th degree of Aries. Sun in Taurus, 13 degrees. Well, I'm going to give you the energy first, and then I myself am going to try to delineate the energy. The energy was like, and I want to have a disclaimer because this could be an issue that has already resolved by the time that I address it, but it came up for resolution, and it might resonate with people or it might validate something that people already experienced. And this is where the notion that when people try to break people down, and then if a person is broken down, they call their reaction psychosis. And if the person doesn't accept that tagging of the reaction as psychosis, basically they call what they did a business strategy. Now, we are coming, I said that we are, now I'm going to try to delineate. Around the Neptune-Pluto conjunction, we had the conglomerate of Standard Oil that began in 1913 at the exit from the conjunction and the preparing for the sextile to buy all the schools for the medicine back then, which was medicine, what is from nature being used in concentrated form to heal, to curate. Now, I also want to stress that I don't follow the notion that people that went through extreme trauma should just feel their feelings or, let's say, take psychedelics and so on and so forth, simply because not everything is compatible for everyone, and not everything is compatible for everyone at every time. When I was writing my thesis proposal, and I think I told that story numerous times, I used prescribed amphetamines. And then I was studying aromatherapy, which is essential oils. For the exam, I think I still used amphetamines. And I'm telling this story because I want to stress, because the many things of holistic medicine can trigger a lot of things, because indeed having something that calms. That being said, even in the things that calm, there are things that are more potent. And I'm only learning about this right now as a person who both studied the topic in academia, went to various practitioners all her life. At the time when I was working, all my money went to medicine, not just my money. My mother had to cook me, so now you cannot eat gluten, so now you cannot eat this. And then I work in the best jobs that one could get before the subprime, before I could acquire education. And I said, well, because I to myself think, what, people make careers even without going to university. And I appreciated studies a lot, but I appreciated studies in the right context. It was not networking as people see it, although I have to admit that there are things that, even by the fact that people wanted me for this and that, created situations where, yes, not everybody can say a thing and then hear that from another, and it's not the best circumstances, and actually the fact that I stood my ground is important. I think if women would go to, let's say, I don't know, sleep with somebody for something, I think they would not get to point of being able to say, they would still get tortured, they would still get raped, but they would not get to speak. And And a lot of these things is happening from fear. Is it literally can go to misplaced arousal. All people are drawn to power, but when they come to eroticism, it's not actually. And then they might enjoy the power they have over another. I don't know, like, but so those issues where we had since at least the Neptune-Pluto conjunction, and very likely even before, where entire medical field changed, and there were the philosophical traditions, and there were the economic traditions. And within that, there were the people that tried to go to holistic health practitioner, and then like, okay, they couldn't go to these processes. Now, and then there were the people that tried to go to conventional medicine. They were like, okay, they couldn't go to these processes. You can imagine that the person that studied a philosophy of the medicines, holistic and conventional, have been through stuff. Suffice to say. Now, this triggers a lot of things in a lot of people, and we have to understand also that the use of when we think about the societies, that there are societies that literally have rituals where they curse themselves in a medical curse. In fact, one of the things that happened to me is that was, and I'm really, really grateful to Light Sefa that was one of the people that was showing that, because I saw things happening medical. And now, all of this happening while I'm trying to tend to my inner child.
סורוקה מיון, יצחק רגר. סורוקה طوارئ, יצחק רגר.
And so people were trying to bring the medical, and then other people were trying to bring the curations, and then there was my reason within it.
התחנה הבאה, מרכז רפואי סורוקה, אוניברסיטת בן גוריון.
מרכז סורוקה الطبي, יצחק רגר.
And so there are a lot of, with the Pluto Neptune, there are a lot of issues of power around the medicine.
אוניברסיטת בן גוריון.
מרכז סורוקה الطبي, יצחק רגר.
Now, essentially, the core wounds go to the infanthood. It also means that essentially every doctor, holistic or not, or channeler or astrologer or broadcaster or me, basically, while we're tending to the yet unhealed wounds of infanthood, share our knowledge from experience. If we saw other people, it's our experience and their experience. But if we saw what as ourselves is with patience, and with being a patient, but also normally when we tend to something that was uncurable in ourselves, is basically our teaching, for which other people will have to comprise what is good for them, what is not good for them. Rahu Chiron native, what can I say? In the fourth house. So it means And when we think about these issues of power, because Neptune is associated also with, yes, mafia, intelligence, and so on, and dissociation and trauma. Neptune is what we didn't know we didn't know.
התחנה הבאה,
And
ג'ונגל
so
בלום, יוסף בן מתתיהו.
this facet is issues where people had to do crime. And then with the same class that did crime were also doing, let's say, the tarot or the medicine. Now, but these people, but originally they had to do crime because they were forced. Or that they had such desensitization, but the desensitization is actually the ritual.
רינגל בלום, יוסף בן מתתיהו.
Now, when we solve great problems in the world, there is a sense of desensitization that is needed to achieve great things. However, when people are committing crime, they use a desensitization because, but they think, let's say, somebody ruins a city and then wants to build another thing which probably is going to be concentration camp, but they don't think about the concentration camp. They think about when they bomb the concentration camp, and then a society will be so and so and so and so, as they envisioned in 1,000 years, 500 years, 10,000 years, and all of them are raped infants. So for them, the people that are going to be lost in the ruining of the city and the building of the death camps and the bombing of the death camps, they can't call it death camps, they call it a 15-minute city, profitable cities. They have to market it well. It's like, how do you market to a billionaire to abolish ritual abuse? You say, what's the one thing that they really did not get to enjoy sustainably? The wealth that comes with relaxed arousal and secure attachment. That you can't have those while enslaving others. If I'm good at marketing, I don't know. Let's say I don't have a lot of viewers, but I do have listeners, as we all do. Now, from that perspective, we can see that just like when people go to fix a car, there was this Alan Jackson song about the person going to fix the car, and the person tries to haggle, and then that person needed to fix their guitar. So he did the same trick and then got 100 grand more. Now, by the way, when people escape these trafficking cults, it's the same type of haggling. Because people were trying to tell to people that they will not have anything unless they do so and so and so and so. Now, why is the thing? Because so that they can be extorted, so that they will not put to prison the mafia boss that became informant. But they can't snitch. Now, everybody suffers. This is why I said about the Rockefellers, they're not fully healed. They were banning medicine for everyone, but they were not fully healed because with slavery one does not heal. It's like it's like the Egyptians that built the pyramids with slaves, and they build the pyramids with slaves, and then what the gnosis, they build the pyramids to have the pyramids to have the gnosis from above. They got the gnosis to balance the feminine masculine. You cannot balance feminine masculine with slavery. Not when you enslave yourself, and I've had a lot of experience with trying to enslave myself, but and a lot of ailments that I've accumulated in. um, if I say I'm retired, then people are like, why don't people want to work? If I say, okay, but for work I need that, because I already tried. Here is what went wrong in the previous jobs. There they had corruption and I got this element. There they had this corruption and I got this element. Now, only thinking now, it's like these are all mafia lineages. And so the employees get the curses, right? They get, but the employees are affected, but also the founders are affected, which is how I found out, well, you know, of course the Rockefellers cannot be fully healthy. Now, when the Egyptians built the pyramid, they got the gnosis, they had to release the slaves. And when the slaves were released, they had to um, believe in what the promised land that they can actually build. So, because they built pyramids, but they never built the country. And some people are similarly in the position of Rockefeller and the slaves. Understanding that both the people at the lower side of the pyramid, they did not have justice accessible to them. Justice was not accessible to Beta per se, for example. Okay, the people that were occultistically raped. Spica, in Libra, justice. Spica is the balancer, the eloquence, the royal star of fair trade and equity in juristics and so on and so forth. Was not accessible for people that went to occultistic rape. And the people that are the top of the pyramid is also lawless, because if you are the Supreme Court judge for an affiliation with the Hague, which is International Court of Justice, and the Doge doesn't want to be accused, for the United States to be accused in Kurdistani genocide, but all the things that they caused. No. But now they begin to, and that was the Trudeau's. Now the Trudeau's was with public housing. Epstein was with private mansions. Probably not only private mansions. Your Section 8 that went kaput in the subprime, very likely is that. So, a lot of people see that, for example, with the story of Britney Spears. When I looked at chart of Britney Spears around COVID, I knew nothing about, not ritual abuse, not any of these things. I look at the chart and I don't know exactly what the placements that I saw there. I remember Sun was next to Uranus, but other than that, what was with Lilith or what was, and then I see, and what prompted me then to press record was how eloquent Britney Spears was. And usually, like I said, By the time a person gets this eloquent, they had to heal in spite of a system of both medicine and justice. And you say, is why you speak so eloquently? Yes, I was with the people that when Jupiter wasn't speaker were contributing to the fact that the nature of sexual boundary violation is such that it's not accessible to have representation even. And the healing, and because it is issue that is not private, then it's not like writing to the notebook. The secrecy was the element there, and then what to shed air on this is the cure. Now, underneath what people did that is some sort of a Peggy Van Roy story. Okay, so that for the people that were, let's say, the offender, then the only defense that they have is to come out as ritual abuse survivor, which means they have to cease performing ritual abuse. Why I say good astrological charity, we use, in astrology we say planetary charity. So good charity for this case is to donate for cases like Peggy Van Roy. Which you can see at Van Ramsdijk, podcast. So I'm going to um, show you again case for Peggy Van Roy. And here, people cannot, even when they go out of these things, they cannot justify trafficking and say, "What I'm ritual abuse survivor," and then what my wife was a whore, Hans Medema. Okay? Your wife was not a whore. Your wife was raped, and so were you. And so the curation, okay, I'm not judging. I'm just saying. So case for Peggy Van Roy, we have by Anneke Lucas and Yvonne van Rijmsdijk. By Yvonne channel, there is a link for donation. Of course, people can donate to podcast of Anneke Lucas. And all of these people also address where they had to, where they were both victims and perpetrators. What cannot be is to preserve this violence as business strategy. Both because the market sector is looking for something different. And the children that are grown now, I see the young children that are grown into gangs. These children are growing into a situation where they're growing to be marginalized by their own society. And this is a time where adolescents are more susceptible to the inspiration of the outside. People are not too old and not too young. I'm 42 this year, so I'm going to be too old. Because these people growing into gangs, doing crime, doing this, doing that, they're growing to be marginalized. They're growing to be people that everybody would excel from everywhere, and all they would hear is, don't go here, don't go there, you don't fit here, you don't fit there. And we are not able to antidote extreme evil without unrooting everything that it lies on. Why? Because when person, for example, I'll give you example. One, I was buying a valerian essential oil, and the company wanted to stress that they got the rights to use that in internal consumption. And they use the word swallowing innocently. I was completely triggered by that because the way I got about this essential oil, I was exposed to that by someone who was trafficked and had epilepsy. And then that oil came up to me, and I said, well, I need to use this oil. This oil I also used when I took my documents back from my school after being ritually abused because I did not, yes, I would, how should I say that? I used every road that I had was to not participate in being trafficker. So, and Valerian is to do with nervous system. They were basically, now from now I understand, it was basically attempting to protect from nervous system hacking. When they rape the children, they do it so to hack the nervous system so that they can commit crime through the child, and then the child is like, oh, it's a child, but you're going to put the child in jail, and then if you put the child in jail, then they know it's going to be crimes against humanity. Now, these are families upon families and lineages upon lineages. And then it's not that people don't care, it's that they are terrified because of all the things, all the crime that they did, which is why I say a donation for cases like a Peggy Van Roy can be tremendously relieving for the lineage. Because it's the lineage, when people take on, for these societies where people took on courses, what the medical course was basically about, the affiliation with the certain crimes and so on and so forth. For me, for example, I did not speak, if I would see my parent had gone through something. I would know, but I would keep it to myself. She was not, let's say, what people, she was not trafficked or anything like that. And then with the child self, there was something that would infiltrate in and violate in sexually the child self. And so there was chronic inflammation. I never took on a course, but there was chronic inflammation that grew later to fungi and so on and so forth. And now I'm in my Rahu return, but in Gemini, which is the skin, but it's also the teeth and the nervous system and the preverbal stage and the things that were causing diseases in those. When other people, certain people take on courses or the lineage takes on courses, and then people will be affected by these courses. And when they would go to medicine, in the past it would be, even today in circles like elite circles, it's only the people that are in elite circles. So never a person even never had chance to heal from those things. So think of circles where raping infant would be normalized. Raping child would be, oh, because it was a famous person that did that, is not that terrible. Caring for one's health in some circles would be considered, how should I say? Oh, but you only live once. And if a person was suffering tremendously, if they, God forbid, appealed for euthanasia. So back when I looked at the Britney Spears story in COVID, before Epstein dossiers, before the full list came out and so on and so forth, I look at the chart and I see something weird here. It looks like what this child was something to do with trafficking. This child was trafficked. This child was and Sol Uranus can be a person needs to rebel the patrilineage line. Sol Uranus, a person will rebel. They will be a rebellious leader of whichever sort. We have no Sol Uranus lawyer that wanted to have a harem of boys. Yeah, it's like it just means rebellion, but that would not allow, let's say, Britney Spears to remain confiscated. Neptune is also the myth of chronic diseases. Why am I saying the myth? Not because the diseases are not real, but because the myth is that people just have to live with them. But it's impossible to live with them. All of that towards the 2060s, which we already see now, as the bisextile is not even fully perfecting at the fire and air. We have all of these teachings of what happened to the medical schools and how Standard Oil bought all of them, banned the medicine for others, and put petroleum in the medicines and what is neurotoxin. That's basically making sure everybody is sick. And so, for Rockefeller's lineage to sustain, they themselves need to address this issue. They can't go on gaslighting, they can't go on, because they won't be healthy. And towards the 2060s, we're going to have a crisis, we're going to have a hard aspect, and the people, yes, what was with this basic style, the good things and the bad things will know more. So, psychosis as spiritual enlightenment was something that was reached by people who performed ritual abuse. And people who are recovering from ritual abuse, as they have their purging, they're not being psychotic. In fact, just like in the Me Too, there were the people that said, I believe you, and the people that said, I believe you because they knew they have to say it, for otherwise they would be exposed. And then there were the people that would outright expose, kind of like Andrew Tate saying, how come a person was accusing several people of trafficking when it's a network? Right now, We're going to see that with Saturn, Neptune. We're going to see that as people talk about mass psychosis, spiritual attacks and rituals, attempt in what they call spiritual warfare. It was rape of people so that they would convert. It was inquisition. It was a spiritual inquisition. People that go through spiritual inquisition are not psychotic, nor can any God have salvation if it doesn't abolish ritual abuse. No God can claim over what they did not help preventing. And the moon so close to Lilith reminds us we're beginning to actually have a foundation for the medicines. And the foundation for the medicines is human rights and sense of self and sovereignty that needs nourishment and can only sustain when we don't have rape and rape in infanthood, rape in spirit, rape in matter. And when we don't have that, then we also don't have what? Crime. And it's foundation also for the way people see with the jail system. The people that say you're wrong is because they are getting granta from people that necessitate them still trafficking, still doing crime, still putting people in position to be raped. No. If not, let them present their argument and let them show how the argument accommodates for all of the people that want to not be raped.